Coming up, the biggest mid-season measuring stick in the area is upon us. We'll break down the Howard Wood Dakota relays from every angle.
And the top 2 baseball teams in South Dakota squared off in Brookings. We've got the highlights.
Plus, some of the best football players from the area met at the Sanford Fieldhouse to show off their skills at the Riggs Power Combine. All that and more coming up right now on Varsity Sports. And hello and welcome to Varsity Sports alongside Jason and Dara. I am Jay Elson.
Well, it's that time of the year when the best track and field athletes come to Sioux Falls for the Howard Wood Dakota Relays.
Yeah, but first, let's recap a busy week that was in track and field highlights. And for that, we turn it over to Alex Heiner.
Hey, thanks, guys. Well, no one would argue that a conference title is important as a state championship, but they still mean something, especially to the athletes competing for them. And that drive was on full display in Sioux Falls on Friday at the Metro Athletic Conference track meets. It was a little on the windy side, but not a bad day for track and field at McEnany, and a few of the metro area's best would make the most of it, starting with Sioux Falls Lincoln's Riley Heyer. The sophomore continues to shine this spring as she picks up wins in 3 different events, including the triple jump and the 100 and 300 meter hurdles. Heyer's sophomore classmate Jasmine Cooper would continue the trend of Patriot success. Cooper, who's ranked top 3 in AA in the 400, 800, and 1600, would anchor LHS to a win in the 4x8 and take first in the half and the mile. Other multiple winners on the girls' side, but you can't forget about Brandon Valley's Krista Brickley. The freshman phenom would win every event she was entered in, sweeping the 1, the 2, the 4, and anchoring the Lynx to a win in the 4x2. On the boys' side, great effort all day from Josh Gearing of Roosevelt. The Rider senior's been limited with injury this spring, but he cranks out wins in the 4 and the 8. He's top 4 in both events in AA this season. The guy ahead of Gearing in the 800, O'Gorman's Tegan Lindner, who's not a bad miler either. In the 1600 meters Friday, Lindner would outlast Jacob Hanna of Brandon Valley and Gabe Peters of Lincoln, breaking Will Lauer's Metro meet record from a year ago in the process. Those 3 times on your screen, by the way, rank 1, 2, and 3 in Class AA this season. The big story on the boys' side, though, just how dominant was Sioux Falls Lincoln on this day. Barry Yona Ferula would take first in the 1 and the 2. He'd also anchor 2 sprint relay teams to wins. Austin Hoshland would take the shot and the disc. Evan Heber would win the high jump. Gabe Peters would win the 2 mile. And Lincoln would walk away with their second Metro title running by a whopping 45.5 points over second place Washington. It looked like a Lincoln sweep was on the cards as defending girls champions Brandon Valley found themselves trailing the Pats by 18 points with just 2 events to go. But just when it looked like the meet was wrapped up for Lincoln, the Lynx would finish 1, 2, 3 in the 3,200 meters, cutting the deficit to just 3 points with the 4x4 remaining. BV needed to finish at least 2 places ahead of Lincoln in the 4x4 to retain their title, but even though Courtney Bickley and the Lynx would win the race, Jasmine Cooper and the Pats would win the meet as they take second in the 4x4, but still edge BV for the conference title by 1 point, 145 to 144. Incredible stuff from 2 of the best AA girls teams in the state.
Well, on the girls' side, first of all, I mean, just proud of the kids to pull it off and going against Brandon, who's a great team and a team that we look at as kind of the favorites in the state. We had kids step up all over the track, and obviously girls like Jasmine Cooper and Michaela Moore and Riley Heyer, and those girls are going to get their points. But really it comes down to today is those other girls that were able to sneak out a 5th place finish or a 4th place finish for us that kind of pulled it out for us in the end.
We had a chance there in the mile relay. You know, we knew we had to win, and we needed some help from a couple other teams, and it didn't work out that way. But I think I'm more proud of them today performing like they did and actually winning the title last year by 10 or 20 points.
Well, the windy conditions at O'Gorman meant no new platinum marks were set at Friday's Metro meet, but that wasn't the case everywhere. Let's get you caught up now on who's holding the best marks in the Dakotas in the latest edition of the Platinum Leaderboard. Well, after back-to-back weeks of double-digit changes, we've only got 7 new marks to tell you about, with 3 of those coming in the boys' field events. Alex Talley retakes the lead in the boys' shot put. He's the first this year to breach the 57-foot mark. Well, look at that triple jump mark by Zach Anderson, that 44 feet 10-inch jump he puts up last week. That's 7 inches better than anybody else in the Dakotas this season. On the track now, just one change this week, but it is an impressive one. In the race of the year so far, Hunter Lucas of Fargo Davies and Sam Klausnitzer of Bismarck had a duel for the ages in the 2-mile at the Bismarck-Kiwanis meet on Friday. Klausnitzer ran a 9:17.56. That's good enough for 8th all-time in North Dakota, but Lucas goes 9:15.02 for the 5th best mark in state history and the victory. That beats the previous platinum mark from earlier this year by a full 30 seconds. That's incredible stuff from the junior from Davies. More North Dakota long-distance greatness on the girls' side, where the back-and-forth battle between juniors Kelby Anderson and Carly Ackley just keeps intensifying. Ackley knocks off Anderson from the top spot in the 2-mile on Thursday with an incredible 10:36 mark. That's second all-time in North Dakota. But 2 days later, Anderson comes right back to take over Ackley's 1,600-meter lead with a 4:59.18. That's 10th all-time in state history. Throw in reigning mile and 2-mile platinum champ Maddie Shirley Fairbairn of Bismarck, and for my money, that's the most talented girls long-distance field ever assembled in North Dakota. Whew, no changes on the field, and outside of the shot and disc marks, I'm not sure if we'll get too many more changes from here on out. Some exemplary marks on that list from the first half of the season. Now, with that said, I've got a feeling the track marks on this list are going to change dramatically by this time next week, thanks to a little competition we like to call the Howard Wood Dakota Relays, fellas.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty safe bet at this point. Stay tuned for that. Coming up later, Jandy's going to take us through some of last week's highlights from the baseball diamond, but first, we are going to preview those much-anticipated Howard Wood Dakota Relays special events. That's next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
Well, there are few meets in the upper Midwest with more prestige than the Howard Wood Dakota Relays. And with the 91st edition of the meet set to begin on Friday, Alex Heiner rejoins us now to talk about it, specifically the special events, which, of course, are one of the great traditions in all of South Dakota high school athletics.
Yeah, that's right. Since 1978, the Dakota Relays have brought together a field of outstanding high school runners from across the upper Midwest to compete in one male and one female invitation-only event. Since 2012, we've rotated back and forth between two races, the 200 and the 800, and this year, it is the boys half-milers and the girls sprinters. They're going to take center stage.
Now we've got the boys 800 set for a 7:25 p.m. start on Friday night with the girls 200 to follow at 8. Let's start, though, with the boys half first, where we're not just talking about the best in the region in this field, Alex. We're talking the best in the nation.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, this field is loaded, and it's headlined by Lucas Trapp. He's a senior from Elk River, a town of about 20,000 between Minneapolis and St. Cloud. He's the reigning Minnesota 2A champ. He's got a PR of 150.8. That mark was the fastest halftime of any junior in the nation last year and the 7th best of any high school athlete. His best is almost 2 seconds better than the old Howard Wood Dakota Relays record of 152.46 from back in 2009. So we could see a little history made on Friday.
Yeah,
Joe.
that's pretty quick. Now, with a runner like that in the field, does it mean everyone else racing for second?
Not exactly. Now, up until the Minnesota State Finals last year when Trapp went off with that 150, he'd been essentially running the same times as Seth Eliason from Hopkins High School. Eliason ran the anchor leg on Hopkins 2A champion 4x8 team last spring. He's been great again this season. Those two went head-to-head in St. Paul this weekend at the Hamline Elite Meet. Both go under 155. Trapp gets the win by 28 hundredths over Seth Eliason. I expect Eliason to keep it close again on Friday.
All right, so that's the Minnesota contingent. Any chance the North or South Dakota boys have a chance in this thing?
Of course they do. I mean, that's, those times are fantastic, but Josh Gearing of Roosevelt has a PR of 155.5. O'Gorman's Tegan Lindner, our current platinum leader in the half, is running as well as anybody in Dakotas right now. Plus, don't count out Luke Julian of St. Thomas More. He's a defending Class A champ in the half and the mile. He's a great competitor. I know the 158 PR doesn't blow you away, but he could really surprise some people this weekend.
All right, one to watch there. Quickly, thoughts on the rest of the field then?
Well, Bo Brandon of Bismarck Legacy is just a sophomore, but he's a great quarter and a great half guy, and he might have as much top-end speed as anybody in this group. Then there's Jacob Hanna of Brandon. He was on our platinum leaderboard for a while this year in the mile. He's just a solid, steady mid-distance guy. And Logan Hansen of Viborg Hurley is the reigning Class B champ, and he's the favorite to defend that title this year. Now, with that said, those three are in that third tier in this field. They'll need a few things to fall into place to really have a shot.
All right, well, that's the breakdown Who's your pick to take the title?
Well, to me, I think you can make a legitimate case for three guys in this field. Lucas Trapp is the obvious choice, but you've got to keep in mind his 150 time came at the end of last season, almost a year ago. Now, Seth Eliason has shown the ability to stick with him as recently as this past weekend, so it wouldn't be a shocker to see another Hopkins runner do something special at the Howard Wood Dakota Relays on Friday night, just like Eliason's former teammate Joe Klecker did last year in the 2-mile. I think Josh Gearing would have a shot at this if he'd been running all spring, but injury has really limited him over the first month of the season. I'm not sure if he's got a 154 in him right now. So that leaves Tegan Lindner, I think, is the other guy that I like a lot. He maybe has the most range and the most speed of anybody in this field. I think he's strong enough, fast enough, competitive enough to keep up when Trapp and Eliason start to break away. With all that said, though, you'd be crazy not to pick the guy that's run 4 seconds better than the best in this field. I think Lucas Trapp is probably the choice.
That's probably a fair choice. All right, Alex, don't go anywhere. After the break, we're going to be talking about the second of those special events at this year's Dakota Relays, the Girls 200. That's coming up next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
Back with more track and field here on Varsity Sports with, of course, Alex Heinert. We just talked about the boys' special 800 that's coming up this Friday night at the Howard Wood Dakota Relays. Let's turn our attention now to the girls' special 200, Alex. This race is going to take place, again, Friday night, 8 o'clock. And while the field has been shaken up a lot due to injuries in recent days, this is still a pretty incredible group.
Yeah, no doubt about that. It's been a tough couple days as contenders Macy Hines of Ipswich, Rose Gay of Davies, and Macy Denzer of Watertown have all had to pull out because of injuries, either sustaining those this weekend or as a precaution against picking one up. But as you said, though, we're not going to dwell on the kids who aren't running because this is still a group that features the defending champ in this event, 3 reigning 200-meter state champions, and the top 200-meter runners by time in every class in South Dakota, and the biggest classes in Minnesota and North Dakota. It's an outstanding field and a real testament to the depth in female sprinting in this region.
Absolutely. Let's talk about some of those outstanding individuals now. Just like in the boys 800, it's a Minnesotan that jumps off the page in this race.
Yeah, and for good reason. Jada Caldwell is a senior from Chanhassen. She's the defending 100 and 200 champ in 2A in Minnesota. She put up some incredible times last year, including a Minnesota state record 23.9 second clocking that also stands as the best 200-meter mark of any female athlete, period, in Minnesota. That's high school and college. She's favored to repeat in both sprints this spring. She's running at Kansas next season. She is a current all-time great.
She is certainly going to be fun to watch to compete with those times, to be sure, but she's not the only state record holder in this field.
That's right, yeah. That's right. She's not the only one. Joining Caldwell in that category, Pierce Courtney Dowling in lane number 5. Now, Dowling's state record is in the 400, not the 200, but she's the AA state meet record holder in the 2. And for anybody concerned with any lingering injury doubts after she missed the second half of last year, she just threw down a 24.95 clocking yesterday at the Black Hills Track Classic in Sturgis to make her the current platinum leader in every sprinting event. She also won this event the last time the girls 200 was the special event 2 years ago. I'm not 100% sure if she's back to the heights of her record-setting sophomore season, but she is awfully close, running really well right now.
It would appear so. So it's Caldwell and Dowling at the top of the list, but we're still just scratching the surface here.
Yeah, absolutely. There's Cara Hausler of Bismarck in lane 6, who won the open 400 meters at the Dakota Relays last year. She's got the top time in North Dakota in the 2, and her PR of 24.88, right there with Dowling's best of 24.67. Then there's Krista Bickley of Brandon Valley on the inside in lane 3. It's easy to forget, but as an 8th grader, she won the 200 and the 400 at state last year. Even though her 200 times have only been in the mid-25 so far this season, she has been unbeatable in that distance, winning head-to-head against the likes of Hannah Young, the AA runner-up in the 1 and 2 last year, and Delaney Carlson, the defending Class A champ, both of whom are in this field. Young and Carlson are kind of in that second tier, along with Josie Wolf of Chester, the reigning Class B 100-meter champ, and Shayla Howell of Belfouche, who's just been destroying Class A in the 2 and the 4 in a bunch of field events this season.
All right, so that's the field. As you look at picking a champion, what's the X factor, if any, in this race?
I'll give you 2. First, I think conditioning is going to play a huge role in this. The fittest kids, not necessarily the fastest, are going to have a big edge, especially as it's early May, and high school athletes are just not going to have the legs to carry them through a 200-meter sprint right now. And second, I think lane placement always makes a bit of a difference in this race. Jada Caldwell is going to have Courtney Dowling in her sights right from the start, looking out from lane 4. And in a race like this, that matters. Remember, though, so will Krista Bickley from lane 3, seeing both of those competitors down the stretch.
And so is that an indicator of who you're picking here?
I like Bickley a lot, but not really. I do think it's a 3-person race with Bickley, Caldwell, and Dowling all in that mix. I really wanted to include Cara Hausler in that conversation. She's been so consistent this year, 3 marks better than 25.8 this season. I just don't think she's got quite the same speed as the rest of that lead group. Dowling and Bickley have been neck and neck in the rare occasions they've ran against each other in the last 2 years, but Dowling has won every time. And Krista could break through, but other than the Open 400 at State, in Dowling's freshman year, I've never really seen her lose. And it's just so tough to pick against her. But on the other hand, 23-9. I mean, that's ridiculous. That would break Jill Teeler's sacred Dakota Relays record from back in 1997. Plus, Caldwell ran a 24-3-8 as recently as last weekend. Maybe Dowling gets a little boost from the hometown crowd. Howard Wood gets behind her, but a couple of tenths, that's a lot to make up in the 200. So I got to go with Jada Caldwell.
All right, well, there you have it. Thanks for the insight, Alex. We're going to have full highlights of the special events and the rest of the Dakota Relays coming up on next week's show. But up next, the top 2 baseball teams in South Dakota met Monday night in Brookings. We'll show you the highlights of that battle between Lincoln and Brookings after this.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, the top 2 teams in South Dakota high school baseball squared off at Bob Sheldon Field in Brookings on Monday afternoon. The Bobcats came in off 14 straight wins, while the Patriots had yet to lose. Their mark at that point, 11-0 on the season. Let's go to the highlights now. In the first inning, the Bobcats' Brandon Heesh reached on a walk, then scored on an Isaac Rubindo wild pitch. That gave Brookings a 1-0 lead. Bobcats extended that advantage in the fourth with a pair of RBI singles, one from Caleb Stratamone and one from Sam McMacken. It was 3-0 at that point, and Brookings hung on to win it by a count of 3-1, dealing the Pats their first loss of the season and, of course, extending their winning streak to 15 games in the process. Bobcat starter Jamison Meyer struck out 6 Patriots over 6 1/3. Impressive, to say the least, Jandy. And now with that win, that puts Brookings atop your Class A power rankings.
Brookings has been so consistent this year. They've done it with a deep pitching staff. Jamison Meyer, by the way, shut down Lincoln, the top team in Class A coming into this game, and he's not one of their top aces. Pitched 6 1/3 great innings for the Bobcats. They've got a lot of great pitching, and they had to replace 8 starters from a championship team last year. So a lot of credit to the Brookings Bobcats. They deserve that number 1 spot. Lincoln just a tick off, 1 loss in the season. Can't knock them down too much. And Pierre has been right in this mix this season as well. Their only 2 losses have come to Aberdeen. So they've got a tough schedule coming up the rest of this week, but they are the 3 teams to beat right now in South Dakota Class A.
Let's move to North Dakota Class A baseball now, Jason. Dickinson at the top.
Dickinson still at the top. The WDA takes command. They've got the top 3 spots now in Class A. I think the best baseball right now is being played in western North Dakota. Dickinson has a couple tough games coming up against Century, but the hottest team in the state right now might be Bismarck. This is a team that after a slow start have, speaking of deep pitching staffs, these guys have reeled off some great pitching performances over the last couple weeks. I expect the Demons to maybe make a surge for that number 1 spot, depending on how this week shakes out.
A couple of teams from the East rounding out your top 5 this week.
Yeah, North and Davies, no West Fargo for the first time this week.
All right, well, stay tuned. The best high school football players in the 5-state area met in Sioux Falls to show off their skills. We're going to recap the Riggs Power Combine coming up next.
Varsity Sports on Midco Sports Network is presented by Mitchell Technical Institute, Shields, and Farmers Union Insurance Agency.
And welcome back. Well, the Riggs Football Academy put on quite an event last week at the Sanford Sports Complex here in Sioux Falls. On Friday, Michigan State quarterbacks coach Brad Salem headlined an impressive group of speakers at the coaching clinic. There was also a recruiting workshop for prospective college athletes and their parents. Saturday, though, was the main event as athletes from 5-state area participated in the football combine, players testing their speed, strength, and jumping ability in front of college coaches.
The biggest thing, and the reason we started doing this, was to give the coaches a chance to see the kids all in one area, to assess them, to compare them, to evaluate.
Well, the player to coaching ratio right now is insane. I mean, I don't know it exactly, but you're going to get noticed and you're going to get your reps here. And I think it's awesome that South Dakota is able to host something like this in the state-of-the-art facility, so I'm really excited about it.
Lots of guys involved here, Jason. Let's take a look at some of the numbers that they put up.
Well, they ran 4 different events. The 40-yard dash, you see 4 elite athletes getting under that 4.7 mark. 2 of those from South Dakota, Spencer Negebauer and Lincoln Gibbs, both looking for big years at running back in their senior year. We move on to the bench press. Some of the bigger guys usually do well, but Lincoln Gibbs once again gets his name. Second best mark of anyone in the power lift in the bench press at 225. And then moving to the vertical, a lot of guys jumping over 30 inches. That's what you want from your receivers, some of these linebackers, DBs. And in the pro agility, another real important one for football players. How quickly do you change speeds and get up into your 5th gear right away? And a lot of these guys putting up some impressive times. You see guys like Carter Karstens make this list from Sioux Falls Roosevelt, who's put up some impressive times throughout this entire combine.
The other impressive thing about this, Jason, is that this thing has gotten very big very fast.
Coaches love it. High school coaches like it. The players love it. College coaches love it. They maxed this thing out at 175 athletes this year.
Crazy.
They're not going to get any bigger than that. They need to stay streamlined enough and small enough to be able to really test these athletes the way they should.
Got to be able to manage it as well. All right, well, before we go tonight, let's take a quick look at some of the best games and biggest events coming up here over the next 7 days in the Dakotas.
Once again, some great matchups. You see North Dakota baseball getting it kicked off on Thursday. Shiloh and Beulah, a couple ranked teams. The Howard Wood Dakota Relays, always a wonderful event here in Sioux Falls. And then Dickinson Century play each other not only in baseball, but in softball. Both teams ranked. And then Pierre also has a tough Saturday, Sunday where they play against Brandon, and then they move on to Brookings for a doubleheader, and we end up with the best Class B game of the week. McCook Central takes on West Central. McCook's ranked higher, but I have West Central as a favorite because they're at home in this one.
All right, look forward to a good weekend across North and South Dakota on the athletic diamonds and the track and field, of course. And remember, bring it back here next week. We'll recap some of that action for you right here on Varsity Sports. That is our time for this week. For Alex Heinert and Jason Andera, I'm Jay Elson. We'll see you next Wednesday.